So good afternoon, everyone. We are live today in the webinar called Overcoming Challenges in Hiring and Developing Swiss Additive Manufacturing Teams. My name is Iulia, and I'm one of the speakers today, along with Nick Pierce from Alexander Daniels Global. We also have here our colleague Sophie. She will be here with us helping with the slides and making sure that everyone can enter the webinar. So when we prepared for this webinar, our intention was to share some of the knowledge that we gained from more than 6 years of hiring and developing teams in the additive and advanced manufacturing industry for international clients. And we hope that this is one of those first steps in opening up dialogues with you who are interested in joining now and to find ways we can collaborate in the future. I'd like to ask you to type in the chat box, if you can, which city you are from. I'm close to Potsdam right now, and Nick is in England, I'm sure. So it's
Birmingham.
in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just tell us where you're from. I'd love to know. And in the meantime, we have new people joining. Okay, so how do we overcome these challenges in hiring and developing Swiss additive manufacturing teams? As we were preparing for the webinar, we saw a pattern. At the core of these challenges are a lack of awareness, in our opinion, a lack of dialogue or not enough dialogue, clarity, a lack of attention to basic human needs, and maybe not enough exploration. Today, we will talk about insanely frequent challenges in this space and the solutions that we have offered. So let me tell you a bit about the topics from today, so you have an overview of what we're going to be speaking about. Okay, so we will start basically by reflecting on lessons learned through our collaborations with international additive manufacturing clients since 2015. We will be also looking at case studies, at least one, but hopefully two if our time permits. And we would like to also introduce ourselves, and so you know who we are. We will be moving on to a little bit of overview of the Swiss market, and also look at an opportunity and challenges that we have been able to identify. Moving on after that, we will speak a little bit about the salary survey, and there were already coming in some questions regarding salaries, differences between salaries compared, so Switzerland compared to other European countries. And there's also an opportunity for the Swiss market, which we want to present briefly. I will be speaking about the benefits of creating a coaching culture. I want to share with you some data from new research, which helps you to create that coaching culture and to help to tap into people's learning capabilities on all levels of the organization, because this is what truly gives a business that competitive advantage which you're looking for. We will be closing with questions and answers. However, we already received a few questions, and we will try to answer those throughout this presentation. Okay, let's move on with an introduction of who we are before we dive deep into the first big topic on the reflection of our learnings. I will start. My name is Iulia, and I'm the founder of the Dragon Coaching House. This is a people management consulting and coaching business, which is focused on this industry. And my goal with this business is really to help leaders adopt a humanistic form of leadership using the Gestalt psychotherapy principles. And these serve the purpose that everyone who's involved feels alive and embodied while they create a long-term business success and positive social impact. I'm specialized in this industry since 2017, when I started working for an OEM in Berlin and grew their European team with 80 new colleagues within a 2-year period. I know Nick from our collaboration when I was his client. I was representing this OEM, and later I joined his business as a managing director in Germany. And I focused on client acquisition, business development, and of course, the relationship with our dear clients in Europe. I bring to this conversation three perspectives: one of HR, people operations on the client side, one from the agency side, and also one as an entrepreneur. The recruitment business has been in my life since 2008, when I had my own recruitment agency in Budapest, Hungary. I studied economics, and I'm now in the process of becoming a Gestalt therapist with a private practice in Germany. So our presence in Switzerland has been a bit challenging due to the regulations which limit businesses outside of Switzerland to work with Swiss companies. So we created a partnership with an agency called IT Divisions from Zurich. And this will allow us now to collaborate with Swiss companies. Okay, and now I would like to hand it over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Iulia. So I'm Nick Pearce, and I'm the founder and CEO of Alexander Daniels Global. My story, for those that don't know it, I'm a recruitment entrepreneur. I set my first recruitment company up almost 12 years ago now. But I was inspired to enter additive manufacturing as an industry about 7.5 years ago. I saw the story of an individual in the UK who'd had a motorbike accident and severely disfigured his face. And the story told how 3D printing was used to create molds on which surgeons could practice. And then they 3D printed and implanted cheekbones. And I was just blown away by this phenomenal technology that was changing this individual's life. So I was compelled to research more about the technology. I found out a lot just from talking to companies, people, anybody I could about the technology. I took a Deloitte course, a massive open online course in additive manufacturing, and just was blown away by this application of the technology in medical, but also in other industries like automotive and aerospace. So founded Alexander Daniels Global 6 years ago on a belief that additive manufacturing would change people's lives, and made it our mission to enable that revolution in additive manufacturing through talent. So we've grown our company over the last 6 years into, a global boutique consultancy servicing the wider value chain of additive manufacturing. So whether that's machine builders, material companies, software developers, or companies who are adopting the technology to identify talent, we help with that. Our team is a diverse team of people with people from Denmark, Finland, Spain, the UK, America, and between us, we've got over a combined 30 years plus experience in additive manufacturing talent acquisition. And a network that's over 65,000 people. So, that's kind of our background and our expertise, if you will. So just sort of moving on to what do we do? I thought probably the best way to kind of share what we do was by the use of a case study. I wanted to give an example of a company that we've helped to achieve their goals. We started working with this company back in 2018. At the time, they had 5 employees in a basement and were a spin out of a top university. They were in stealth mode. They'd just received one of the biggest Series A funding rounds for an AM startup, and basically needed to build a team. And we started talking to them. We opened a dialogue with them. We listened to them. We understood what were their goals, what was their vision for the business, what were their challenges, what were their hiring challenges, and how could we as a recruitment partner overcome those hiring challenges. And, you know, the challenges that they faced were they didn't have an HR department for a start. They had, despite the the startup team being very successful previously, had no experience or relative experience in additive manufacturing. You know, they had people from robotics, they had people from other industries, but not from AM. So what we brought to the table was our knowledge of the market, our access to talent, and our expertise in additive manufacturing. And over a period of, you know, 18 months working with them as a partner, we helped build up their upper and middle management layers to support their rapid scaling. And then over a period of 18 months post that, we helped take them from initially 5 to 20 and then 20 to over 90 people now across 2 sites, recruiting a range of different roles from software to hardware, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, materials, process, application engineers, etc. So, you know, it was through a process of, you know, understanding their needs, providing them with guidance, engaging in open dialogue, and evolving and growing together that we were able to support them achieve rapid scaling of their business, despite significant challenges around, you know, similarly to Switzerland, for example, being in a very expensive location for hiring, not having internal HR team to draw upon to do recruitment, and being in a very competitive market for talent. So that is probably, by example, one of the ways that we can demonstrate what we do as a business and how we can help companies overcome their talent challenges. So what I would like to look at now is generally, in the past sort of 6 years that I've been working in this industry, what are the common challenges and pain points that organizations face when hiring within additive manufacturing? So let me start. One of the main challenges that we see, especially for companies who are entering the market, whether this be, you know, large industrial companies just starting out on that journey into additive manufacturing, or whether it is a high growth innovative startup, one of the common challenges that they face on both sides is a genuine lack of understanding of the AM market, and in particular the AM talent market. It doesn't act and exhibit the same kind of challenges that other industrial technology markets face. So a lot of the time when we start working with customers, the first thing that we provide and the first thing that we help them to understand is the market, you know, is the talent market, and, you know, help them to understand the sorts of challenges they might face in hiring. What we see as well commonly amongst businesses, you know, established businesses even, for example, you know, without mentioning any names, there are many examples of, you know, big companies who've entered additive manufacturing that have very well developed HR teams, recruitment teams that have been very capable at identifying and recruiting talent for their existing businesses. But when they move into additive manufacturing, they struggle. So despite the fact that they have HR teams, they still find it difficult to recruit talent in AM. But for those businesses that don't have HR teams, we provide a bridge between their knowledge and our knowledge to help support them. I think one of the important points to note here as well certainly relates to structure in recruitment process. This is one of the things that we often see, in particular with startup organizations, but even with bigger organizations as well, is a lack of structure in recruitment process. Now, what this leads to is inconsistent hiring. One manager might recruit one way, Another manager might recruit another way. There's no clarity around values that are being recruited into the business. And this makes it difficult to scale an organization around a strong vision and values. But at the same time, an inconsistent process can have a negative impact on your ability to attract talent and engage talent because you're operating in a competitive market. I think one piece of advice that we often have to give to organizations that we're working with is think about the candidate experience. You know, when you're bringing somebody to your organization to recruit them, you know, do they get a good process? You know, do they feel really valued by the potential employer? Does the recruiter or the individual get fast feedback on their application? Do they get fast feedback on interviews? You know, these are all things that can negatively impact your employer brand and your perception within what is a very competitive market, and something that certainly needs to be taken into account. We'll look at a statistic in a minute, which I think is really interesting, which relates to retaining talent. We talk a lot about, you know, how do we identify, engage, and recruit talent? But what we often overlook is the need to retain the talent we do already have. In an increasingly competitive market, sometimes retaining talent can be as important, if not more important, than hiring new talent. One of the things that our 2021 salary survey identified was that 50% of talent in additive manufacturing are likely or extremely likely to change jobs within the next 12 months. And a global survey that was done across all sectors found that 41% of employees consider leaving their current employer this year. Why? Well, it's been called, in the US at least, the Great Resignation. And you know, certainly, you know, we've seen some data that suggests that this is backed up by people actually leaving employers. Now, as I said, why is that? You know, we look at 2020, the global pandemic, not many people changed jobs, stuck with existing employers. So you have an element of pent-up demand there in the candidate marketplace looking to leave. But what you've also got is a lot of people who have thought about how they've been treated by their employers through the pandemic and are starting now to think, once the market's improving, whether they should move to secure a better opportunity for them. If we look then, what are the top motivations for changing jobs? Again, this comes from our global salary survey from 2021. Number one being career progression. And I think it's important to take on board here, okay, well, what does that mean? You know, we understand that this is why people want to change jobs. So as an organization, if retaining talent is so important, what structures and plans do you have in place to offer career progression to your existing workforce? If we talk about the importance of retaining talent, then having a strong culture that values learning, development, and progression and offers coaching and individual progression plans is going to help retain those employees and give them meaningful career advancement. I think it's always interesting to see that salary still remains quite a big motivator for why people would change jobs. We know through Maslow's hierarchy of needs that salary in and of itself is not an intrinsic motivator, but it is a demotivator where it isn't enough. And I think this is where salary comes in as a motivation for changing jobs. With the market growing as it is, and with opportunities being plentiful for people in additive manufacturing, it's quite easy for candidates to get a sense of what their market worth is. So if they feel they're undervalued by their existing employer, then they will look to change to get the value they feel they deserve. And I think this is important for employers to understand and take note of is, are we paying a fair market rate for the people in our organization? You know, individuals who join at a junior level often move up on a progressive scale, but the market outside moves faster. So I think it's really important to constantly benchmark your salaries against the external market and ensure that they keep pace with, you know, the progression that an individual has within your organization. I think number 3, new challenges is also worth taking a note of. You know, we know that people are motivated by meaningful work. So, you know, what do you as an organization do to develop and push talent, to give them exciting new projects to work on that are going to help them develop skills and experience? Because that's what they want. I think the way that this should be taken by, you know, employers is knowing this is the guide to helping you retain your existing talent. It also serves as a guide of, you know, what can we do to attract talent into our organization? We know that they want market competitive salaries. We know that they want career progression. We know that they want meaningful work. You know, do you provide that? Can you position your organization as an employer of choice based on those aspects? We just look a little bit now at the sort of benefits then that talent are looking for. And I think what's interesting here is that on the whole, there's a quite close correlation between what employees want and what employers offer. I think inevitably and not unsurprising is the fact that flexible working is now the #1 benefit desired by employees. You know, post-pandemic, that ability to work more flexibly and from home became the norm. And I think it's embedded now in modern working culture. So I think organizations that don't offer some degree of flexible working will probably find themselves behind the curve, both in terms of being able to recruit new talent and retain the talent that they have, especially where other employers can offer that. Now, we know that not all roles can offer that to people, especially where you're working in quite a hands-on role, either as a machine operator or within an R&D facility, for example, or indeed in application engineering and, you know, working at customer sites. But an approach to work which is flexible and provides autonomy to the employee can, you know, provide what they're looking for. Noticeably as well, again, you know, post-pandemic, that private healthcare and, you know, employee pension or employee pension plans, for example, are also very high on the desired benefits by employees. Again, unsurprising since post-pandemic. Probably where we see a bit of divergence between the employee and the employer is around the third most selected for employee, which is stock options and equity. It's rare to sort of see this offered by employers. I think a lot of startups offer this, and certainly larger corporations might offer shares in the form of RSUs. It's evident that this future wealth creation is something that's quite attractive to talent within the market and something that is important to consider for the future. So yeah, I'm just going to sort of round off finally this sort of segment with another case study that again sort of demonstrates how we can work with an organization to support, you know, their talent objectives. And this one's slightly different. You know, this client was a European-based machine OEM that were well established, well known within the market, but had been through some sort of turbulent times, and, you know, perhaps outwardly didn't have the best employer brand, weren't necessarily an attractive business for talent to join. So what we did in working with them was repositioning the business and the company to help them acquire talent. And we adopted a more proactive approach to hiring, as opposed to trying to find square pegs for square holes. We just brought them great talent. where we saw that they needed people, we would identify people within our network we thought would fit their culture, and we helped them to change their culture from a very Germanic R&D centered business into a more international, multicultural organization. And through partnering with them over a period of what has been now, again, almost 3 years, we've helped to reposition that business to an employer of choice, with an increasingly diverse workforce, with people from all over Europe and the world. So that's just another example of how we have worked with an organization. So that sort of concludes the sort of segment on talent and challenges in hiring. Now we'll sort of take a look at the Swiss market. And I think what's interesting to sort of note here is in the research that we did, in some respects, it was difficult to really find an established, AM market. We see a handful of big players investing in additive manufacturing, some exciting F1 company in Sauber, but very few exciting startups. 90 Labs was probably the one that we identified, but it sort of led me to ask the question, where is the innovation? Where is the growth? Where are the exciting startups in the Swiss AM market? And it sort of begs the question really as to whether the Swiss AM market is underdeveloped. Now, I know we had a question that came in prior to this webinar today around how can Swiss AM companies compete with neighboring countries? And I think, at least compared to the likes of Italy, France, Germany, we could say that the adoption and proliferation of AM technology in Switzerland seems probably underdeveloped. However, therein lies perhaps a significant opportunity. We see some industries, for example, in Switzerland where the adoption of AM is starting, luxury watches, for example, med tech, aerospace. And I think that in those areas, the Swiss AM market could significantly grow and benefit as an adopter of AM technology. How can it do that though? And what are the conditions that need to be met to ensure that the Swiss AM market can continue to grow? Well, it faces some challenges. Again, we received questions ahead about, the high cost of living and high salaries in Switzerland that can make it perhaps preventative or difficult to recruit and grow a team in Switzerland, especially when compared to, for example, Italy, where salaries are a lot lower. We identified in our own research that we simply couldn't enter the Swiss market as a recruitment company and start recruiting. The law is such that unless you have a Swiss entity registered as a recruitment business in Switzerland, based in Switzerland, you cannot recruit for companies in Switzerland. So that can limit then the access to a wider talent pool, and is one of the reasons we partnered with IT divisions to be able to serve the Swiss market. But certainly what we see, in my views, are that, the ecosystem in Switzerland for additive manufacturing could be developed further. Let's take you back to the very first case study that I looked at. It was a Boston-based business that were a spin out of MIT and was one of many spin outs that have come out of MIT, and the infrastructure and ecosystem that exists in and around Massachusetts in the US is a hotbed for startup and high growth AM businesses. And what we see there is strong collaboration between academia, research, and business to drive innovation, both innovation in new technology, materials, and adoption of AM technology. And it's that ecosystem that really does drive the proliferation and adoption of the technology. And I think that's perhaps a little bit what we see lacking. Now, we know that one of the other big barriers to growth within any AM industry is investment. And I think, again, this is where big business and financial services, private equity and venture capital need to create the environment in which this can grow in the Swiss market. However, I think, given the opportunity that exists, there's a strong potential to create a really competitive and really dynamic Swiss AM market that can, compete for talent and grow significant opportunities for talent within an exciting industry. So yeah, I'm going to sort of hand over there now to Iulia. Just before I do, I've mentioned throughout the course of the presentation so far our global salary survey. We produce this every year for the last 5 years. We're currently taking on responses for the 2022 salary survey. So if you want to take part, please do so. Again, prior to this webinar, we had some questions around salaries in Switzerland. You can register your interest, and we'd be happy to work with companies and individuals on perhaps creating a more bespoke Swiss AM salary survey report if there is enough interest. So please take part in the 2021-22 global salary survey and register your interest for the creation of a specific Swiss report. So I'll hand over now to Iulia, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, so let's move on to the coaching subject. Data has a better idea was such a good sentence, because it's really helpful in the case of coaching. There is so much confusion on the coaching market. It's incredible. For many people, for example, it's not clear what coaching means. And there are so many people who call themselves coaches, but they don't have the education from an accredited organization or a university. And that often can cause just bad experience for clients and also damages. When a coach works with a leader or a manager, he works or she works indirectly with the team as well. Because in coaching, usually the subject is work related, and if it's work related, then it's something that has to do with the team. And so make sure you have a coach who has team literacy as well, who's trained in coaching teams, who understands group dynamics and has worked with groups before. This is very important also in one-on-one leadership business coaching. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between coaching, training, and consulting, because I've noticed in my conversation that these terms are oftentimes confused. So for example, when I want to learn something, let's say I want to become an Excel superstar, I want to learn 3D design, then I can book a training and I will get this knowledge. So if I want to learn something specific, then I just go to a training. When I realize, for example, that there's a special area of my business where I don't have expertise, then I can invite in a consultant. Consultant knows very well about that specific field. This consultant can assess the situation and provide to me an ideal solution, which then I can decide whether I want to implement or not. So this is the consulting bit. And coaching is very, very different, and it's powerful, especially when the relationship between the coach and the client has trust, and when there's commitment from the client side. And the commitment from the client side has to do with the willingness to gain awareness and new understanding of something which doesn't work anymore, or something that caused them to be stuck in a situation, or something that is causing a lot of problems, and that they recognize the fact that they need support in overcoming this issue. Coaching is different from training and consulting in the sense that it helps a person to come to a new realization on their own. A coach doesn't give advice, but knows how to get you from where you are to where you want to be. We work with the story of the client, and even more so with the process and the dynamics, which are probably invisible for the client because they're blind spots. This awareness is powerful because true transformation happens when the solutions come from within and not when someone tells us what to do. I just think about quitting smoking as an example. When someone tells you you need to quit smoking, you're not going to quit smoking. You know, it has to come from a real understanding from within. What is it that you are trying to compensate when you are smoking? And when this understanding comes, then there's a better chance to quit smoking, for example. So, yeah, what is a coaching culture and how can it benefit your business? A coaching culture means that you work with external or internal coaches, and that managers and leaders in your company are using coaching skills in their interaction with the team members. It's basically a shift in the mindset. In today's world, there's so much talk in this industry about shifting the mindset of clients when adopting these technologies and so on. And the most credible way to do this is to start with ourselves. Let's move on a bit to the next slide, because I want to show to you some data, some benefits of creating a coaching culture. This data comes from the International Coaching Federation research, which was done with thousands of companies globally. And at the last page of our presentation, you're going to find the resources, and you can read this research in more detail if you're interested. But what I found very interesting is that 33% of organizations asked were using at least 3 coaching modalities. This means they either had an internal coach or they either had managers and leaders who were using coaching skills in their interactions with their teams, or that they hired external coaches. There's also very significant growing acceptance from the business world when it comes to coaching. And this also probably has to do with the fact that we have so much more tools now to measure the return on investment, which I know in the past was a problem when someone wanted to bring in coaching into the company. So 36% increase in the demand for coaching versus 2016. And on the ICF website, you can see reports going back until 2016. So you can also track the changes there if you're interested. Business coaching is still, so to say, the leading coaching modality for businesses. Of course, it makes sense. And when we speak about business coaching, there's leadership development, coaching for first-time managers, or just managers who have been doing this since a long time, team coaching, and also coaching for small businesses, small business owners. So 75% of millennials born between 82 and 99 are expecting to be coached in the first 10 years of their career. So this is also in a way connected to career progression, because they want that support in order to get to their goals. I'm also a millennial, for example. I have been coached. I have a coach even now. I'm also in supervision. I don't know how I would do what I do without that, to be honest. For me, it's an incredible support. And there's also a big shift in the perception of coaching, because in the past, coaching might have been brought in as a solution for a problem. But now it's more like a badge of merit. So you don't only bring in coaching because you want to fix somebody, but it's because you simply want to strengthen what's already working well. And that is just insanely powerful in a team dynamic. So strong coaching cultures are more than twice as likely to be high-performing organizations. Think about what that means for your business outcomes. And also coaching is able to influence social change to a large extent. And there are many companies who want to be sustainable, who want to be responsible in so many ways, who care about climate change. And if they have a coaching culture, this helps so much in achieving that goal or supporting also that positive social impact. And 1 out of 2 managers is coached or is expected to be. So this could be your business, this could be your competitor's business, I don't know, but it's definitely a growing trend. Yeah, I have another, on the next slide, I have another link for you guys. It's a free executive summary, which you can download. And there you can read a bit more about the values that the coaching culture brings. And they really highlight 2 values, like the business outcomes and the employees' engagement, which are both very important in developing that talent, but also in retaining the good talent. So strong coaching cultures are more than twice as likely to be high-performing organizations, which, let's face it, it's everyone's goal when they're building a team. They want a high-performing team, but not everyone knows how to do it. So this is one way you can do it if you're creating a good coaching culture. And 2 out of 3 employees say that they're very committed, compared to 1 out of 2 for the rest of the sample. And I'm reconnecting here with which one of the thoughts that I mentioned right at the beginning is this attention to basic human needs. In a coaching process, you inevitably work on yourself. You re-examine your behavior, your patterns, your life, your work, your decisions, your choices. And this kind of awareness and these kind of realizations, they help so much in living a more authentic life. And that's when people realize that, okay, if someone invests in me in this way, then of course that I want to do more and I want to create more while I'm here. So it has an incredible ripple effect as well. But on the next slide, I want to show you really the impacts which are seen as a result of coaching. I find these very, very interesting because probably the most significant, according to the numbers here, is the improved communication skills. Then they mentioned the increased self-esteem, self-confidence with 40%, the increased productivity, the optimized individual and teamwork performance, improved work-life balance. Also, just getting an awareness around this subject can help people to be more present when they're doing their work. Increased well-being, also connected to that. Improved business management strategies, also connected to communication. Expanded professional career opportunities, which is also connected to what Nick, you were talking about from your salary survey. And also just a faster onboarding into a new professional role. This means that someone can get started faster, they can get integrated faster in ever-changing teams. So this is also a significant one. And I saw no impact from coaching was 4%. That was the smallest percentage. Yeah, so coaching is more and more credible in organizations because it also can be measured if you're using people analytics, if you're using both qualitative and quantitative tools to measure it. And more organizations who are asked in these surveys, they made a financial commitment to coaching. For example, the 24% of these businesses had a dedicated line item for coaching in their budget. And from these 24%, 85% of strong coaching cultures did that, and 44% of the high-performing organizations did that. And the next 2 points are really referring to the coach-specific trainings, which managers and leaders and internal coaches receive through either coaching organizations or universities. So this is also a growing trend that companies invest not only in having a budget for hiring an external coach, but also to having their own internal coach and to train their managers and their leaders so that they can use these skills when they interact with people. Okay, on the next page, you will find the resources. We will share with you this presentation, and those are links that you can click and you can read more. We also recommend you that you read the last one. This is from LinkedIn, and it's very, very much connected to engagement and employer branding. Okay. It's Q&A time. We already received a few questions, and we also answered a few questions. And I wonder if you guys have some questions now for us. You can type it in the chat if you do. In the meantime, Nick, there are a few questions which came in advance. Can I tell you one which was connected to your part?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the questions we got in advance was what can be done to nurture the talent pool from Switzerland? You've mentioned this in your part of the presentation.
Yeah, I think one thing that can be done to nurture the talent pool, we don't see an expansive AM industry in Switzerland, so we don't get what I call the trickle down of knowledge into new people, which is continuing to grow the talent pool. So I think, we see some, strong universities, for example, in Switzerland that are starting to take up the mantle around developing or including in, mechanical engineering courses more on additive manufacturing. So I think that, academia has a role to play here, but we've learned over the years that academic knowledge of additive manufacturing is still not really what industry wants or needs. So there needs to be some way for that academic knowledge to be combined with hands-on experience to then create talent that industry can really work with. And that comes from, again, what I said before, this ecosystem, this collaboration between academia, research, applied research, and business to create the building blocks for talent to get the experience they need and that the business wants. And think outside of that, and then that's a more longer term solution for the market. I think outside of that, what we have to consider is the shorter term solution is, well, where's their great talent and how can we recruit that in? And we have bordering countries, for example. I mean, I can give one example of an individual who lives in France but works in Switzerland. He takes advantage of, the high salaries that are on offer in Switzerland, but lower cost of living in France. So I think looking beyond the Swiss market into neighboring countries might be a way to identify and bring in new talent to the Swiss market as well.
Thank you. In the meantime, we had a question here in the chat, which is how Swiss AM is or may compete against other countries despite the high human labor costs, I assume.
Yeah, Loic, I think, has written that, and I think he refers to here the fact that it's a relatively high salary environment. So, it's a question, I guess, how can, the Swiss market compete against, for example, Italy, where salaries would be a lot lower, and even Germany, where salaries might be a lot lower. And I think, the answer to this question is, identifying perhaps the application areas where, the Swiss market is your global leaders, and what are they renowned for? You will not compete with lower cost countries in production of parts that can be made anywhere, where low skill level or low expertise and knowledge of the fundamentals of that industry are required. So my view, and it's purely a view, is that it's about identifying the application areas where Switzerland is global market leaders and has defined expertise and knowledge that can't be competed with by other countries. We talked about a few earlier, luxury watches, for example. There are lots of application potential, I suggest, within that market. How can Switzerland leverage their knowledge in that area to identify the applications for AM? Or additive manufacturing is a disruptive technology. So, can we think about new digital supply chain solutions, create new business models, for example, around completely new applications that perhaps don't exist already, again, in areas where there might be some competitive advantage in the Swiss market. But I think it's a difficult question to answer. If we're talking purely, from a talent perspective, how does it compete? Then I think it's probably one of the advantages because it's attractive. High salaries are attractive to talent potentially coming in, relatively low, and in some cases, zero taxation rates, again, relatively attractive, offset against the high cost of living. So I don't think it's necessarily a case of being a barrier to being able to attract talent in, but potentially it is a barrier to the expansion of the industry because it means that your costs are higher when comparing that to other countries where the labor costs will inevitably be lower. So that's where the return and the value, the application has to be significant and has to be, something for which that knowledge that exists in Switzerland is unique and competitive.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And as I was listening to you, I also thought about a question which I get a lot, or I hear a lot connected to coaching. Namely, how do you know who's a good coach if you've never been coached before, but you're kind of interested and would like to start working with one? I think that the ICF is one of the biggest global associations, which accredits also a lot of trainings, a lot of companies which offer trainings where people can go to learn, to be trained, to become a coach. And once you see that ICF accreditation, that's always a good sign. Another good sign is when someone knows how to work with teams and groups, because for every executive coaching meeting, it's inevitable that the relationship with the leader and the team comes up, and everything that you work with in that space only with the leader also has an indirect effect on the team. So understanding what that effect is really important in getting good results. Same for team coaching. If you do team coaching, you should be certified team coach, so someone who studied that and understands how groups work and how interventions can help the group to become more a mature system. That's because that's the goal in the end. And there's also a new trend where it's becoming more and more important that coaches also start to get a training in psychotherapy, because you never bring only work to work, you bring yourself to work. And a life unexamined is very dangerous. An unaware leader is very, very dangerous. And for every business, the best thing you can do is to have more awareness, to have clarity, to have this dialogue, this clear communication with people, because that's just solves so many problems and also prevents a lot of problems that we see very often. Okay, do we have any other questions? If not, we would like to say thank you for those of you who joined us live. As Nick said before, regarding the salaries, please let us know, register your interest if you would like to participate in the salary survey. Right now we are working on EMEA and the US, but we would only create a salary survey specific for Switzerland if there's enough interest. So please register that interest. And we will also share with you the 2021 salary survey, so you get a feel of what this report looks like year by year. And feel free to participate also in the 2022 salary survey, with a mention that you are filling it out from Switzerland. Yeah, and we would like to invite you to get in touch with us, to contact us, to discuss these topics in relation to your business. You can either write to Nick. You have both our email addresses here on the slide. And for anyone who is contacting us in this regard until the end of November, we have an extra bonus, which is a checklist that you can immediately use for your job briefing meetings, for those kickoff meetings. It's very useful because it helps you to structure the hiring process in the best possible way, which offers a good experience also for your candidates. So yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Sophie.
And likewise, thank you everyone for listening and for joining us.
Yeah, and just get in touch with us if you have any questions. We're happy to answer them. And have a very lovely evening.